In the second letter of Peter, the Apostle Peter gives us a warning, chapter 3 and verse 3. We must be careful to remember that during the last days there are bound to be people who will be scornful, the kind who always please themselves in whatever they do, and they will make fun of the promise. They will say, "Where is this promised presence of his? Everything goes on exactly the same since creation's beginning." And there are some activists who are saying, yes, it's exactly the same. The signs that Jesus gave us in Matthew 24 were fulfilled at the time of Jerusalem and have no application for our day to day. Now, is it important? Well, next year, situation on this planet is going to be worse than this year. And are we going to be despondent, or are we going to do what Jesus said in Luke 21 and verse 28? When these things begin to take place, stand erect, hold your heads high, because your deliverance, your liberation, your salvation is at hand. In other verses it says, the kingdom is at hand. But if the signs were fulfilled in Jerusalem's day, in the first century, then do we have hope? So let's look at it carefully, and we'll turn to Matthew chapter 24 and read it carefully. Now, the situation here was that Jesus was just a couple of days before he was going to die, and he was in Jerusalem, and his followers were showing him around this beautiful temple and saying how lovely it was, which it was. But Jesus said to them in chapter 24 and verse 2, "You see all these things? I tell you solemnly, not a single stone here will be left on another. Everything will be destroyed." Now, that was an awful prophecy. Now, a few hours later, some of the disciples managed to get Jesus privately, and they asked him a couple of questions. When is this going to happen? In other words, when is Jerusalem going to be destroyed? What will be the sign of your coming or your presence and of the end of the world? Now, it's quite possible that they believed all of those things were going to happen at the same time. And Jesus was careful to give a true answer, but it wasn't until he was resurrected that he managed to persuade them to realize that the kingdom wasn't coming and his second presence wasn't coming immediately. They had a lot of work to do. However, so what was the sign that Jerusalem was going to be destroyed? And Jesus gave one sign, and one sign only. And it's in Luke chapter 21 and verse 20. And he said this, "When you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, you must realize that she will soon be laid desolate." And he gave them instructions that when they saw that the Christians were to get out of Jerusalem, they were to flee for their lives. When the Romans came in 66, the year 66, that was fulfilled. And the Christians got out of Jerusalem quickly. The Romans came back in the year 70. The destruction was awful, absolutely dreadful. But did they see the signs that Jesus mentioned about his second coming or his second presence? Did they see world wars, great earthquakes? Did they have COVID? Did they have all these things? No. But they had the one sign, and that's all that was necessary, was Jerusalem surrounded by armies. So let's have a look now at Mark chapter 13, where Jesus also was talking about the end of Jerusalem. And then he said, "But in those days after that time of distress," and Matthew said the same thing, after the time of distress of Jerusalem, there would be, the sun would be darkened, the moon would lose its brightness, and the powers of the heavens would be shaken. Now, it was going to be some time before those signs were fulfilled. We have seen the powers of the heavens being shaken. We've seen the atom bomb, which has split the atom. Those people who live in the paths of tornadoes or hurricanes or floods or fires, have known that the powers of the heavens have been shaken. Never before have we seen such awful situations. And as I said, next year is going to be worse. But Jesus has given us comfort. He said to us, sorry, this is the problem with a live performance. Jesus said to us, hang on a minute, here we are, verse 28. Take the fig tree as a parable. As soon as its twigs grow supple and its leaves come out, you know that summer is near. So when you see these things happening, when you see world wars, fires, floods, droughts, people worrying about their livelihoods, they've lost their homes. If you've been watching the news, it has been dreadful. But Jesus said, know that he is near at the very gates. The kingdom is at hand. So although it's distressing and we could get very despondent, Jesus said, lift our heads up because our salvation is near. So I can't give you the day or hour. I cannot say to you, look, it's coming tomorrow at 6 o'clock, but we are very near the time. And we might talk about this again at another time. Take care and God bless.